Hello and you're very welcome to the JMac podcast. I'm John Man. Of course, the podcast brought to you by urgrich.com. You can promote JMac podcast to get 15% off on their website. And tonight I'm joined by former entrepreneur Kevin Kevin McCurdy and GS Statsman Mr. Matthew Hurley to talk about last weekend's championship action and of course this weekend's championship action. Kevy, how are you? What's the crack?
Jesus, John, I'm struggling today, man. I'm sweating like a Mexican pouring a box in the middle of a Chicago summer, you know. I had a good weekend. I was at Celtic match on Saturday and it continued on to Sunday and watched some of the games, you know. We had, 10, 11 games over the weekend. So some were worth watching. Some will go into the annals of the archives and never be seen again in reading in the years. They were that bad. So lots to discuss. Unlike other weeks, you know, not really many interesting results. Everything sort of went to form. And by all accounts, the Cavan footballers they're going to be sponsored next year by a sperm donation company because their shooting's that good.
Jesus Christ. That's a claddy one. Mr. Hurley, how are you?
All good now, John, all good. This weekend, Kevin definitely put into perspective this weekend. There was a few results where it was kind of a waste of time, really, the Kerry and Dublin games. Case in point, the Roscommon Galway game, which was the main game of the weekend, wasn't really good quality in the first half. And a lot of complaints about the quality of football more than anything. And that probably was shown on Sunday as well. And I suppose it's hard enough for me to say this, but the hurling was actually more entertaining this weekend, and that's saying something, to be honest with you. But yeah, some interesting results. Like Offaly beating Meath was a big one. So looking forward to getting into it.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Great to see you. One of you are in good form anyway. After a brilliant weekend. We will bit of housekeeping before we crack into the action, lads. The GAA football team of the week for this week is number 1, Ethan Rafferty, number 2, Tom O'Sullivan, number 3, Declan Hogan, number 4, Darren Malone, number 5, Danny McGill, number 6, Paul McNamara, and then number 7, Daniel Walsh, and then in midfield of John Maher and Conor Early, and then number 10, Kieran Murta, 11, Ryan Johnson, 12, Conor Callan, and then number 13 was Keelan Sexton, 14, Damien Comer, and number 15 was Conor Turbett. And the Footballer of the Week nominees are Mr. Galway's Damien Comer, Mr. Armagh, Conor Turbett, and Clare's Keelan Sexton. Mr. Kevy, any thoughts on that team of the week?
Yeah, I'm a wee bit appeased being an Ulster man. And Matthew might agree with me being somebody that's not an Ulster man that I think we've got 2 Armagh players in there and we've also only got 1 down player. Pat Haver, I thought, yes.
2 down players.
2 down players, sorry.
Danny McGill and Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, Pat Haver maybe. Liam Kerr at times, yes, he was very, very impressive for them. So,
yeah.
Look, again, these things are picked, and it's a novelty to do. You know, when you're playing down or playing as a Division 3 team against a Division 1 team, you know, Pat Haver's playing against Brendan McCole one-on-one, who's a very, very good defender. Who's really Conor Callahan playing against? That's a Division 1 team against a Division 4 team. So you understand where I'm coming from on that. But yeah, it was an interesting week in terms of showing the GAA's flaws up for what it is in the current system. And
yeah.
so that team for me is very, very, excuse me, I'm not trying to be Ulster-centric, but very Southern-centric, if you understand what I mean. Mm-hmm. When you look at the 2 games that we had in Ulster, especially the game yesterday, I would have expected a wee bit more. But that's just me. I don't know what Matthew's feelings are on that.
It's an interesting point. Who would be your player of the week?
How do you mean Comer didn't get man of the match? Is beyond me.
Sean Kavanagh didn't pick him, Kevy. Pick that up with Sean Kavanagh.
I picked a few things up with him in my past, but I'm not picking this up with him because that was, look, he's entitled to his opinion. Doctors differ, patients die. You see things differently than I see them, and Matthew sees things differently than both of us will. but I don't know what the hell he was watching. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I was absolutely stunned that he didn't get it. I mean, I was like, it was one of them mic drop moments where you go, well, was he watching the same thing as I was watching? But again, he's entitled to his opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mr. Hurley, your thoughts on Team of the Week?
Just on Sean Cavanagh before I get into Team of the Week, you know my opinions on him anyway. I never took into Sean Cavanagh's opinions as a pundit really, and to give Kieran Murtagh the man of the match. Yeah, Murtagh did well in for Roscommon in his own right, but like he got all these scores from frees in the first half. He wasn't particularly putting up trees, to be honest with you. Like, I know he was hitting frees and you have to do that, but Comer hit 3 points from playing the first half. There's a difference, So when Galway were kind of struggling, he was still the man to light it up. And for me, Comer would have been player of the week for me as well. I'd agree with Kev there. But I was kind of shocked not to see Rory Egan from Offaly not in Team of the Week, because he scored 1-1 from wing back. Like, what else do you have to do to get in Team of the Week from that Offaly team? And a brilliant result over Meath. And on down as well, look at the highlights anyway. I thought Danny McGuinness in midfield was excellent. He was driving down up the field. I thought by the looks of it, I thought he was very good, in fairness. And as for Kevin's point on not enough Armagh players, not enough down players, I sort of agree. Like, even when you look back to week 1, like Tipperary beat Waterford, Waterford are a very, very poor team, and yet Tip had a player on Team of the Week, which was kind of a farce, to be honest. But Kildare had a player on Team of the Week. It's kind of a situation where every team that wins has to get a player on Team of the Week. Bit of equality and things like that. And you know what? It's kind of boring when you think about it. That's my honest anyway, but kind of shocked not to see Rory Egan or Daniel McGuinness or even Conor Carr for Roscommon. I thought he was brilliant in goal against Galway. He saved a certain goal in the first half from Damien Comer. I thought his kickouts were excellent. So maybe 3 of those players will feel hard done by, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I suppose it's just, look, we're not slobbering about it, John. It's just a novelty and people do this. But, read me out again the 3 nominees for Player of the Week. Kieran Murtagh, Damien Comer,
Damien Comer, Conor Turbett, and Keelan Sexton.
Okay. So we look at Turbett's performance and we'll come to talk about that. Like, again, Turbett carrying Armagh for times yesterday. So look, it's as I said to you before, it's doctors differ and patients die, but it's a novelty. So I wouldn't get too I wouldn't be going down to the gun club and saying out a few guns and going after journalists over, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. It creates a bit of debate, Kevin.
Yeah, but unnecessary debate, if you know what I mean. The big issue here is that the Team of the Week, no problem, but when we look at somebody like Kieran Murtagh versus Damien Comer yesterday, I mean, that pretty well does create debate,
Yeah. What about Sean Cavanagh's jacket?
No comment.
Oh lordy, I know. Right, let's crack into it, lads. Before we start pulling our hair out, we will start, unfortunately, with action in the Ulster Senior Football Championship quarter-final in Kingspan Breffney Park on Saturday. It was Armagh 114, Cavan 12 points. Very, very disappointing from definitely my end of things. Obviously, I thought Cavan were going to show up a lot better. They didn't show up a lot better. Mr. Hurley, where did it all go wrong?
Well, to be honest, the main thing that went wrong was the wides, and we were speaking about this off air. Like, Cavan 16 wides, Armagh 3 wides. Cavan had 32 shots compared to Armagh's 20, and Armagh won by 5 points, which tells you all you need to know. Like John, I'd say you know more than me, to be honest. With Cavan, like, there didn't seem to be an urge about them watching on TV on GA go in the first half. I just thought anyway they were losing by 7 points. Like, they weren't driving up the field. Like, it's a bit of vigour with Armagh driving up the field. And in Cavan, there just wasn't. There wasn't enough fight. And seeing as this was a game that Cavan had to win to get into the Sam Maguire, a huge opportunity as well to get into the Ulster final. I honestly don't know why the urge wasn't there from the start. And this is an Armagh team that struggled in Division 1 for large parts of the league campaign as well. So it was a poor performance by Cavan. And they started playing in the last 20 minutes or so. It was too little too late. And again, even when there was a bit of vigour, they were still kicking from ridiculous angles as well. And it was very poor from Cavan. Look, I think they'll be favourites for this Haldane Cup. I still think they have an outstanding side. But actually, I was listening to the RT Sport podcast earlier on today, and Rory O'Neill made the point that there could be some Cavan players in that panel thinking, look, we didn't win the Tailteann Cup last year. We had a crack of it and we failed. Why not? Why should we go for it again? We could go to America or Australia. And I was thinking about this point again. I'm thinking, it could be a valid point. Maybe like Thomas Gallagher, even last year, he's thinking, look, I could do better things with my years, could go to America for a few months or so. And maybe, I could be wrong now, John, but that could be a worry, what Rory O'Neill said in the podcast. So, yeah, it was a very bad night for Cavan. But for Armagh, Conor Turbitt, outstanding, as Kev mentioned there.
Yeah.
What performance.
7 points, wasn't it?
Points, yeah. And 23 shots in the last 3 games, 20 points, 10 from play. That's incredible. And it was kind of coincidental. I said to Aaron as well, that Reno O'Neill, left the panel more or less going into the Tyrone game. That was the start of Conor Turbitt's form. It's amazing how players pick up form after that sort of incident. It's incredible, really. And he has stepped up to the plate. In fairness to him, we knew he had the quality, but it was just about producing on the big stage. And he has over the last 3 games. Fair play to Conor. And so far, it's very, very early days. But he looks to be in razor sharp form and a player definitely to watch coming down the stretch in the summer.
Yeah, absolutely, Matthew. And I suppose obviously Turbitt was very, very good, and obviously Armagh's just, I suppose, shooting efficiency in the first half really was bang on. He given it Stephen McPartlin chipped in with a great point as well. So it's Matthew, look, scores win you games, and Armagh took basically all their chances and Cavan didn't. Probably simple as that.
It was, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was simple as that. Like, you looked at statistics and all that, and like Cavan actually, I think, had more possession. Like they had 10 less kickouts than Armagh as well. Like, it seemed like in every other facet of play, Cavan dominated possession, and Armagh just they were very efficient. And maybe that's kind of the difference between playing Division 1 football and Division 3.
Yeah.
Like, Cavan excellent players, but like maybe Armagh playing Division 1 football for 2 seasons now, or I think it's 3 at this stage. It stood to them. And definitely stood to them in this game. But in some aspects of the play in the second half, I think Armagh were kind of sloppy. Like, Reno O'Neill had to save a certain goal from Cavan in the second half as well. So like, if that was a team that was on form from Cavan's point of view, Armagh could have been in more trouble. And they'll have to pick up the form more so in the second half, particularly when they face Down, because Down are a team on the crest of a wave. We've seen them yesterday as well. Excellent performance against Donegal. So Armagh would definitely have to up their game coming into the Down match. But for this particular game against Cavan, they were absolutely superb, and their scoring efficiency was absolutely on point.
Yeah, like I suppose the big thing that spooks me is it's just that they didn't really look like they had a cut, and I suppose with the last 20 minutes they really had a go. Maybe Armagh took the foot of the pedal a bit, and we didn't probably utilise the talent we probably had really in the first half. And like, it's an ultra championship game. The card at the end of the stick is All Ireland football. If you go and beat down Donegal, and there could have been so much more of an effort made. And maybe I know you can blame the condition, you can blame this and that and the other, but there is more, and there is a lot of quality on that pitch for Cavan to cause Armagh more problems than they did, Mr. Hurley.
There was, and it was kind of strange. You've been looking, you were at the match, John, so I'd say you were more of an insight than me. I was just watching the game.
Matthew, he was only there for half an hour. The card left at half time.
Lies. Go on, Kevin. I don't believe a word of that. Go on, Matthew.
We'll never know. But in fairness, like, by the looks of it, Gareth McKiernan used to be, like, he is still an excellent player for Cavan, usually one of the stand-up performers for them, but he seemed to be quiet in the first half. He just wasn't getting enough ball into him. Like, Paddy Lynch was pretty quiet as well. Like, I know the whole full forward line scored for Cavan in the first half, but it was just, it was kind of slow. And
the build-up was very slow. Yeah, compared to Armagh's.
Yeah.
and the urgency just wasn't there. Like, I think Paddy Andrews mentioned this on Go Mark O'Shea was on it as well, and they were commenting about how slow the build-up play in Cavan was, and you could see it right from the off, and you could see the difference actually. Cavan most of the time got the ball, they were hand passing around the place, and it was very, very slow. But when you watch Armagh's goal, once they get the ball, they break away at pace, and they struck it into the back of the net eventually with Ben Creeley getting the touch. But it was so fast from midpoint to the pitch right down to the goal.
Mhm.
And Cavan, like, it took an age to get the ball up there, in my opinion, anyway. It was very, very slow. And yes, Cavan may have had more shots, but like, they were taking ridiculous angles. They were very, very slow, and ultimately, like, despite the low possession, I think Armagh absolutely deserved this game. And
Mhm. Yeah. Even the restarts and the kickouts were quite slow, and just everything was just a bit very, very, very flat on Saturday, Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, in fairness to Matthew, summed it up very well. In terms
As he usually does.
We can just look at stats, and that for me doesn't tell all the story in every game, but this one purely does in terms of, like, I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm the far side of 29, and I don't think I've ever seen an Ulster Championship match where somebody's kicked 16 wides in the amount of possessions they've had and never won an Ulster Championship match. You just can't do that. The shot selection was horrible. I said to you off air, I think it was the BBC had this up, that none of these sort of shots were inside what we would call the
score D,
the honey pot. Matthew makes another really good point about the build-up. Very, very, very lethargic, very laboured. Armagh seemed to get their scores much, much easier. I made this point to you last week, if you remember, about Tyrone in the first half, Monaghan in the first half, when McKiernan kicks the ball into the goalkeeper's hands begging, and it's just so slow. Yet in the second half, when Frank Burns kicks it into Began's hands, it's so fast. So the difference Monaghan last week had in transition was key to them winning that game. And Armagh's transition was so much quicker than Monaghan's. Matthew also makes a very good point. You asked me last week who was the main guy, and I said to you, people would turn around and think that it's lazy punditry or lazy journalism to say it's Geroid McKernan or Patrick Lynch. But Geroid McKernan has such a big influence in this team. As I said to you, he not only scores, he's a big leader, he can catch ball from kick out, he scores from frees, but he brings other people into the game. And he was so uninfluential in that opening 35 minutes. And the one thing about the Ulster Championship is, and we all know this, is it's unforgiving.
Yeah.
And when Creeley scores that goal, really we only see one way. Armagh, that suits Armagh.
Yeah.
Cavan are trying to chase the game then. They're in their box. Armagh are in their box. They're gobbling Cavan up and hit them on the break. And when you have a kid up front at the minute like Turbot, Jesus Christ, Turbot could walk the Paris catwalk at the minute, and I'd fancy him. He's incredibly good. He's
so
just
silky. Like, he scored a point in the second half, and he put one of the Cavan lads just on their backside. Like, the way he just drifted in. Oh, it was poetry motion.
Even against Antrim, or even in the game against Donegal in the National League this year, I've seen him 3 or 4 times. I mentioned to you that I really believe he's a phenomenally talented footballer. And Matthew makes it again. For the third time, Matthew articulated another good point in that
he's a genius.
He's standing up at the time when Armagh need him to stand up. Armagh were coming into this game. Let's think about this. And I got this wrong. I thought Cavan would maybe turn Armagh over. But Armagh were coming in psychologically a wee bit damaged. They had lost their Division 1 status. Yes, they had good quality games. They have 5 points in Division 1. Very... It's not often that somebody gets 5 points and gets relegated. So they were coming in against a team that was a dangerous opponent who had just been promoted, were on the crest of a wave, getting into their own backyard. Conditions weren't great. We'd all heard this stuff about rain in the background. And Armagh, in fairness to them, as I said to you, John, last week, the wood under McGeady, when they need to produce, they produced and they stood up. Yeah. Ethan Rafferty, his contribution, not in defence, but his contribution knocking long ball in was key as well, you know. So I said to you before, last week, I think it was, I don't know where the Armagh project's going. I was a wee bit suspicious this week that I think that they could have been turned over. And Matthew said it. There was no hunger or bite in Cavan in the first 10, 15 minutes. Now, if I was Mickey Graham, and I'm not saying Mickey Graham didn't do this, the first thing I'd be saying is these guys are psychologically a wee bit frail. There's a wee bit of rumours going on about their camp. In the first 5-10 minutes, it's a dirty, wet ball today. Get down, drive into them, hit somebody, be hungry. I didn't really see that happening with Cavan. They were a wee bit flat, if that's the best way to put it to you. And Armagh were, on the other hand, completely professional, played to their strengths, did what they had to do. And, you know, I think it's their, quote me if I'm wrong here, Matthew, it's their first back-to-back win in the Ulster Championship since 2008. You know, so huge, big stat.
They owed us the beating. They did owe us the beating because we bet them the last few times. Yeah,
probably so. But, you know, when you look at Turbot, 7 from play, 7 overall, 4 from play, you know, tremendous stat. Creely's goal, JMac and the way he developed that, the unselfishness to knock it to the back post, you know, Armagh was just so professional. Jolly O'Byrne's coming in, you know, he had obviously missed the Antrim game, you know, so him getting back into the fray. And then, of course, Rain coming on. And I spoke to you last week about this big unknown about Rain and all this commotion that was in the background. So, look, a lot of things cleared up for Armagh. But, you know, they get over Beaches Brook and they're now at the canal turn because down in Armagh is a mighty, mighty game. Set up for a mighty game, 2 massive rivals. And, you know, we talked about how important it is for McGinney to get silverware, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it is important for him to maybe win an Ulster Championship. But, you know, it's going to be really difficult. But Armagh was so professional on Saturday. And, you know, credit where credit is due. But Conor Turbot at the minute, he's unplayable. He's just brilliant to watch. He's the entrance fee alone.
Yeah. Yeah, he absolutely is. He absolutely is. Well, yeah, there we go, lads. It's just very, very disappointing. I suppose, obviously, Matthew, you do make a very good point. Like maybe some of the Cavan lads are maybe questioning, maybe potentially might not be getting as much game time as wanted. Like, does America come knocking? Or I suppose any thoughts on that, lads? Like, if you're maybe a man that wasn't getting minutes, if a phone call from Chicago comes, Kevy, what would you be doing?
Well, it's plenty of money in Chicago. Been out there before. We've seen last summer it was out there. You know, but I don't know. It's a suggestion that people have put on RT podcasts, as Matthew's articulated. Look, I think a lot of these Cavan boys are professionals, very, very good professionals. They've done a lot over the last couple of seasons for Cavan. And I think if they want to see themselves going anywhere in the next 2 to 3 years, they want that natural progression of going back up to where they're playing against better teams all the time. They're now back up in National League 2. So to have that mentality of thinking, well, screw this summer, that's not healthy. Not healthy at all. Especially when in Division 2 next year. It's going to be a very competitive Division 2 for them. Cavan were in 1, 4, 5, 6 years ago, you know, and then went on and won the Ulster Championship. So for me, that's backwater thinking. Absolutely backwater thinking. You know, Cavan need to kick on for where they've been in the last 18 months. The way that they kick on is whether in the Tailteann Cup or in the Sam Maguire, whatever else it is, going in, doing whatever else they have to do. But I don't think these players want to think that way. I think these players want to drive Cavan on. It was just a very flat performance from them the other day. And having seen them over the last 18 months, look, they have been a credit to Cavan and hopefully they can make that next step now.
Yeah. Us Cavan people are very good people, Kevy.
Miserable individuals.
Right, we will move on before I go for heap of points to forget completely about Saturday. We'll move on swiftly. It is in action. We'll blip through these games because there wasn't probably a whole pile of highlights in these ones, lads, but we'll go through them. The Munster Senior Football Championship semi-final in TUS Gaelic Grounds. It was Clare 116, Limerick 16 points. Another great win for Colin Collins' men. And on to go to the final against Kerry. And we move on to Fitzgerald Stadium. It was Kerry 25 points, Tipperary 5 points. Now, the thing around this game, before we were kind of getting on air, the point provincial championships, Kerry win with 20 points. We're no further on, Matthew.
Yeah, you basically, I said this to Aaron as well, and yeah, like Marty was much better, riding with the horse and carts and going around the town doing the montage on RT. That was more entertaining than the actual match. Like the match was. But look at it, I was watching the highlights. I didn't watch the full game, and I was bored. Simply, yeah, it was absolutely nothing in the entire 70 minutes, and you have to question, why do we actually play these games? It's a waste of time for pundits. It's a waste of time for media. It's a waste of time for players. And Kerry wouldn't have learned anything from the game. Tipperary will now go into the Tailteann Cup with degraded confidence. What's the point of the game? Simply, and yeah. These games will get out to Dublin in a minute as well. That was equally as dreadful, but they'll face Clare now in the Munster final, Kerry, and hopefully before turn to lads, hopefully that game's on Cusack Park, because that will have some atmosphere in Clare at the moment. I think I was mentioned in the group chat earlier today, and please, like the Munster GA have to have it in Cusack Park, because it'll add more atmosphere. If it's on at Fitzgerald Stadium, Killarney, good luck, because the atmosphere will be absolutely dead. So yeah, Munster GA, please do the right thing. Play it in Cusack Park and make all the fans happy for once.
Great shout, Matthew. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant shout.
Yeah. How about Munster GA changed the? Like, I think the Munster GA back proposal be in 2021. Can't even remember. Did they back change?
John, like, this game doesn't do anybody any favors. Nonsense, rotten, useless. Dinosauric. I don't know. Kerry had, what was it, 12, 13 different scores. Tom O'Sullivan run up 2 from the outside of the boot. He's looking like a catwalk star. Doesn't do him any favors, because he ain't going to get that room inside Croke Park later on in the year, So it just doesn't do anybody any favors, And this is where we need to go back and think about things big time.
Yeah.
Matthew said at the top of the show, and he was 100% right. Like you go into bars and you're anywhere in the world, and people are watching hurling flat out because it's just so, it's got that hunger, it's got that passion, it's got that skill. Gaelic football at the minute is just not. It's not a sellable product. It's rotten. It's absolutely rotten. I mean, we had wasn't it last year, the year before? Sky Sports had. Mayo versus Leitrim on, if you remember that game.
30 points, wasn't it?
326 or something to 14 points or something.
Leitrim didn't score that much now. No.
It was absolutely rotten.
As our good friend Martin Tyne is saying, Terry was probably watching a few birds in the stand.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the product's wrong. The system's wrong. So let's address it.
Yeah.
This match done nobody no favors. And you know what? Matthew makes a really relevant point here. Tipperary are now going into the Tailteann Cup as is. And they've had a really bad league campaign. And they're going to be so demoralised from that. That, a bit like Donegal's season, which we'll come on to talk to shortly. Probably after that, Tipperary season's over. Let's be real.
Yeah. Probably over after the league, lads, but this is what we're putting up with, and I don't know how clubs, or not even clubs, the county executives are letting this crack go on, but look at lads, I don't know, it's just you'd feel your heart would go out to Tipperary, the footballers, the management team. I don't know how to keep the show on the road, but there we go, lads. We will move on to the Connacht Senior Football Championship semi-final in Mark Fitzpark. Unfortunately, it was a mismatch. We were expecting a bit more, but this is what the way the game transpired. It was Sligo 2-16. New York 6 points. The fairy tale of New York is over, Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, and it probably set the tone once Sligo got that goal. Like Cunningham takes a 45, and then straight away Sligo hit the ball down, flick on the kick out, and easy finish from Paddy O'Connor in the end. And it was just easy from there for Sligo. It was disappointing, but I said this to Aaron as well. Kind of New York, they had a fairy tale story in the Bronx beating Leitrim, in fairness to them, but they just seemed a bit uncomfortable, I thought, in Market Park. Like they just didn't seem like they wanted to play their style of football. Like Gavin O'Brien kicked some lovely scores in fairness from long range, but Sligo were just such in control of this game. Like Niall Murphy scored 5 points, Paddy O'Connor was 2-1. Pat Spillane didn't have his best game in the Sligo shirt, but he still hit 2 points, so pretty good performance as well from him. But New York, it was a fairy tale coming to an end, and it's disappointing now for New York because they'll have only one game guaranteed in the Tadgett Cup. They're not going to a group stage in the Tadgett Cup. They'll only have one game in preliminary quarterfinal, which is kind of a disgrace in my opinion. Like, why can't you have a 5-team group? You let New York in with the 5-team group, because how are New York going to improve with more games? And with the current system, they're just not going to improve if they're going to play one game. See if New York up against Fermanagh, Cavan, or Meath maybe, who are much better in quality, and they are much more comfortable with playing on our style. New York could get hammered in those games, and that'll be demoralising, and that could be a very bad end of the season for New York. That's just a small thing for the GH. At New York, their group stages is Tadgett Cup, but other than that, look, brilliant win for Sligo, and they wouldn't have got credited either way. Look, New York and London beat them 2 sides to get to the quarter final. I think Kevin mentioned off here it's kind of a farce that Sligo get to the quarter final and they get a kind of a free pass to the Sam Maguire, but look, it is the way it is. And they're into the quarter final now against Galway.
And the thing about this is, John, not to labour on this point, but let's give Sligo a bit of credit as well. This is McEntee. I think it's his 3rd year.
Yeah.
I tipped them to go up from 4. They've done a professional job. Look, they played really well inside Croke Park last year in the semi-final against, was it Cavan or Westmeath? One of the two of them.
Cavan.
And look, they've come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. They made progress. They're up into 3. We've got a final here. And you know what? Anything can happen really in that. And I mean that. I don't see them beating Galway on a given day, but look, it's great for them lads where they've come from. I mean, let's remember also the trajectory of how psychologically damaged these group of guys were with the Red Oak Murphy issue maybe last year or 18 months ago. So look, McEntee's done a really good job in there. So look, we'll look at how bad the game was, and how one-sided it was, but give Sligo credit. They've made a lot of progress over the last 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully the Connacht final goes well for them, because you do not want to see a one-sided game. But we will wait and see how it goes, and we'll move on to yesterday's action in the Connacht Senior Football Championship semi-final in Dr. Hyde Park. It was Galway 1-13, Roscommon 1-9. Obviously, Davy Burke was very, very disappointed after the game. Roscommon's Connacht journey comes to an end, Mr. McGarty.
Yeah, it was always going to be a big ask when the draw was made. It was always going to be a big ask for Roscommon to win the Connacht Championship this year, in my opinion. Again, very, very similar to Cavan. Didn't start the game well. Needed a good start. Needed to put cat among the pigeons for the doubters. Damien Comer in the first half, first 25, 30 minutes was unplayable. He was just really, really good. Roscommon found it really hard to get a foothold in the game. Matthew mentions earlier about Kieran Murder getting man of the match. Maybe he was the one keeping them in the game, ticking the scoreboard over. Galway, they looked okay yesterday. I'm not saying they were overly brilliant, what we've come to see. Again, we're looking at the same guys. When we look at Dylan McHugh, Sean Kelly, Cal Sweeney, what's his name? Johnny Comer. Johnny Daly, sorry. Them guys yesterday. Matthew Tierney getting on the scoreboard as well. Look, at halftime there was an air of inevitability about it. Again, as I say, Roscommon didn't come out with that hunger. Then all of a sudden the game springs into life in the third quarter. And this is what I don't like about Galway. And this happened once or twice with Galway last year, if you remember me saying. They got into a lead last year once or twice, and then the Armagh game being typical of it, they let other teams back in. And there were signs there that they were going to let Roscommon in. But look, generally for me, again, conditions play a factor. It wasn't an overly great game of football. It's not one for the ages. Not one we'll remember.
Yeah.
But when we look at a forward like Damien Comer, who's able to contribute the way he did from play, that's the difference. When we come down to the brass tacks of 1-9 to 1-13, who's the difference between these two sides? And it was Damien Comer. And that's why he should have been man of the match. As I said, I'll leave it at this and I'll say it again. He was unplayable in the first 25 to 30 minutes. And Roscommon had no answers for him. And that's the long and short of this.
Yeah. What about yourself, Mr. Hurley?
Yeah, Kevin absolutely summed that up very well in fairness. And Damien Comer, what a performance. Like he got 3 points in the first half when Galway needed him to step up, and he did that. Like I actually, like, the rumours actually were for the RT man of the match that they announced it 5 minutes before the end of the time. But by that time, Comer got, I think he got 1-3 or 1-4, definitely by that point anyway. So it's incredible how you can get man of the match when you think about it. It's really, really damning. But the main thing for Roscommon, I think, why they lost this game was the turnovers. Like from turnover balls they lost, they conceded 110, which is damning in fairness. You could take it away that Galway were aggressive at the tackle, they were turned, and even it could have been 210. I distinctly remember Roscommon kicking the ball in the first half right to the middle to Johnny Heaney, I think it was. He then gets the ball, puts it into Comer, brilliant save by Conor Carroll. And like the warning side should have been there for Roscommon, but it won't. And like, they were just bad at that yesterday. Like the kickouts, fair enough, they were decent, like 100% kick-out retention. But when you look at it, the kickouts were actually short. Conor Carroll was giving out to his defenders, and Galway were actually pushing it back. And another thing mentioned on the RT podcast I was listening to earlier today, very interesting point, I think Kieran Whelan made it. Galway, compared to Mayo in the last week, like Mayo decided to push up at Roscommon's kickouts, and Roscommon decided to kick long over the Mayo defence. Galway decided to push back, let Roscommon come up and let Galway do the tackling after that. And what I will say, Comer back when he was back defending, not just attacking, was superb. Sean Kelly, superb. John Daly, John Maher in midfield, absolutely brilliant. And like, I'd be really, really optimistic if I was a Galway fan, because let's not forget, a few years ago we were questioning whether Pádraig Joyce actually had a defensive system as a Galway manager, and possibly there was question marks last season, especially the All-Ireland final against Kerry. But they proved yesterday that the Hens were having to, I think it was 1-5-1-6 from play, which, that's very, very low for a Roscommon team that was home, and the Hyde is supposed to be a fortress. So that was a pretty good performance from the defence from Galway more than anything yesterday. They grinded out the win. I agree with Kieran as well. They were good. They were good, and I think there's more levels that Galway could go up on in the future months.
Can I just come back on that, Matthew, and just say to you, I think you've highlighted the most important point about Galway, and I made this point, John, last year, 18 months ago. I wrote Galway off to my detriment last year.
Mr. Joe Joyce still looking for you.
He is. He's looking at a boxing match with me, naked boxing match in Ayr Square, I think.
For charity.
Yeah. Matthew's point about Galway's defensive setup is now key. We know Galway have potent attackers all over the place. We know they have a decent midfield. And my big issue with them last year was I always questioned their defence. See, the one thing coming out of the league this year, when you look at Kelly, when you look at Dylan McHugh, these guys, right? They have a real good framework at the back now that they base that counter-attack on. And I didn't think they had it, but I have to turn around and admit I got that wrong. And I think at the minute, the sum of all their parts, they're a serious, serious contender this year. Serious contender. You know, it's all right, go to an All-Ireland final last year. Back it up. Can they do it? I absolutely think they can. You know, when they've got a lot of attacking threats. It's all right having a lot of attacking threats if, and we'll come to talk about down on this, especially if we don't have a defence. But, you know, that's a talking point about Galway, especially in the first half of this year. Their defence has been absolutely immense.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely has. And obviously the form of Damien Comer and Mr. Shane Walsh will be absolutely key as the year tricks on, and we will fly through some of these results. Obviously in the Leinster Senior Football Championship quarter-final in Glennisk, O'Connor Park, it was Offaly 111, Meath 10 points. Oh God, here we go. And then Laois Highmore Park, Dublin 430, Laois 2-9. What do we think, lads?
Well, what's the point in the first game? The second game, Offaly and Meath, let's remember where them two teams are league-wise. They're not too far apart. I'm really impressed with Colin O'Rourke. I always find him a brilliant writer when he was doing the Sunday Tribune or the Sunday Indo. I always liked reading him, right? And I think he's a very real guy. He calls it as it is. Others don't like him. And bar the Brian Doer incident, if you remember that, he's got stuff pretty much right in his punditry life. And his assessment of where Meath football now is a real assessment. And that's what I like about him. And yes, they come back off a defeat yesterday. And I see, was it Joe Sheridan tweeting today? I think it was, it said something like, we have 40 good footballers. Why can't we have 40 good footballers in Meath? The reality is that you always have to look at what's happening down the section, as in your 20s, your 18s, further on down. And look, Offaly had really good 20s a couple of years back, and they're starting to bear fruit now. And Meath have to be realistic of where they are. And look, I would say to Meath people, any Meath people that watch this, or people related to Meath people, ask them to watch this. Just stick with O'Rourke. He's a smart man. He calls it as it is. If they do go into the Tailteann Cup this year, they'll be one of the favourites for it.
Down the services of Jordan Morris. I think Jordan had a bit of a falling out with the management team. Kev, I'm not sure.
And that's fine, but here's the fact. O'Rourke doesn't suffer fools gladly, right? As I say, he's astute analysis of it. He's brought Sean Boylan in the background, right? He had I really feared for Meath when I spoke to you in January of this year. I thought they were a shoo-in to go down from 2. They went down to Cork first day of the league. Real good performance. Yes, they eventually collapsed in that league, don't get me wrong. But for them to stay up this year was a big thing, and they were safe on final day. So, you know, obviously it's a disappointment for them to lose to somebody like Offaly. And they could have made a Leinster final, given the semi-final draw. Offaly now play Louth, I think it is. Isn't that right, Matthew?
Offaly play Louth, yeah.
Yeah. So even if they were to get over Louth, who have already beat them this year, I think, in the National League, what's the point in Offaly going inside Croke Park to get absolutely hockeyed again by Dublin? You know? So O'Rourke for me, he's making very astute points. You know, play at the level you're at, realize at the level you're at, try to build up. And Meath people have always been they're proud, don't get me wrong. I mean, in my own lifetime, I've seen Meath win, 4 or 5 All-Irelands. That's not where they're at the minute. That's not where they're at, have been at for a long time, to be quite honest with you. And O'Rourke's trying to give them the realism and trying to build.
Yeah, and I watched off the ball there this morning, and I think it was that Anthony Moyles was very, I suppose, vocal in his views, and you'd be very much off the opinion. I know punditry and, you know, a few hiring the blah blah, but you know, the very man that probably should be getting his hands dirty and getting involved, Kevy.
Yeah, well, again, a bit like Sean Kavanagh, Anthony Moyles has allowed his opinion, and he's on the ground and he sees what's happening in Meath more than me or Matthew or yourself, John, do. Interestingly, I don't think Matthew likes Meath very much because of the Meath-Cork rivalry in the late 80s. Isn't that right, Matthew?
Exactly, and their fans are a bit loud. That's what I get.
I'll be honest with you, I was at them games, 87, 88. I was at them games. What games of football they were? You know, what two teams?
With football was football, Kevy.
Both have regressed. That was men's football. You know, you get hit was a freaking hit, like, you know. But both counties have regressed. And Andy Moyles can say what he wants, or Joe Sheridan can say what he wants. Look, and maybe they have personality clashes with O'Rourke. I'm not too sure what the synergy is in the background. I'm just telling you, I've read O'Rourke for 15 years in Sunday Indo, right, or Sunday Tribune, whatever else it is. He's a bright guy, you know, and he's a lot of respect there. He came in this year and he started off very well with them. And, you know, if he wins that game by a point, as I say, and he goes on to the Louth game and they're beat by a point, or sorry, win a game by a point, all of a sudden they're in Leicester final day in Croke Park against the Dubs. But like Tipperary and Kerry, is it going to do them any favours? No, it's not. No. So he knows where he's at. I think he knows where he's trying to build. And he's trying to say to people, catch yourselves on, jump on board with me. We'll see where we'll go. Just very briefly before that, man, Matthew, and again, what does this do for Laois? Nothing. What's it do for?
That was embarrassing. Like Dublin by 30 odd points. Like it's stupid.
It's mental. It's absolutely mental. What's this do for the product of the game? What's it do for Conor O'Callaghan? What's he gonna? Is he gonna look around to tell his son in 15 years' time, I played against Laois one day in Port Laois, scored 4 goals in 4:30 to not whatever else it was. Nonsense. I don't even want to talk about this match. It does nothing for nobody. And least of all, when you're trying to grow a game or grow a political party or grow a business, you need to protect your most vulnerable side, which is the teams in Division 4. As Matthew said earlier, he really articulated this earlier against Tipperary. What's this do for Laois' season now? If I'm playing for Laois, I'm on the phone to some guy in Chicago. You know what I'm saying? I'm out of here. You know, I'm playing John Denver on repeat. Alexa play John Denver, leaving on a jet plane. You know, this does nothing, absolutely nothing for our game, our product, but most importantly, our players that are putting in the commitment to, you know, go and train there. Like, them guys went on the field, and do you know what? You can say all you want. They probably knew before they even stepped foot they were bait, you know.
Is 430 a record?
I would, to be honest with you, I wouldn't know.
30 points in a game of football. That's like I was talking with my neighbour earlier on. Like he couldn't believe it, and he's a dub. Like he's just in disbelief. Like Matthew, record.
I think it is a record overall. I think Dublin actually scored 1 point lower, 429 against Westmeath one year in Croke Park. Penman scored incredible goal that time. I think Kerry actually scored 32 points against Clare. But again, we're going to them 2 teams again, playing Division 4 teams. You know, like I said this on our podcast as well, like Dublin and Kerry are the 2 aristocrats of Gaelic football. They're playing against Division 4 teams. What do you expect it to happen? You know, it's... And Kev,
but as Kev said, like this weekend probably exposes how flawed it all is. If not before, but this definitely hammers home the point, like, you know.
Yeah, and,
absolutely.
And he's right. What's the point? And it's kind of a waste of time just talking about these games. And I said during the Kerry game again, and it's a waste of time for media, for players. Like, what are Dublin actually going to learn? What's Desi Farrell actually going to learn? What's it going to do to Laois' season? You know, it's a blight on our sport, and you know, the J have to fix this sooner rather than later. But a quick one on me. There's a few Meath fans actually want Conor O'Rourke gone, and I agree with Kevin completely. Meath should stick with him because he knows what he's doing. He knows Meath football inside and out. Kevin's absolutely right as well. He wrote some stuff on the Independent. He probably was the most level-headed guy on the Sunday game panel as well. So you just keep. And Meath need to be more realistic where they are. There's some Meath fans online thinking we're a Sam Maguire team just because we scored 3 goals against a Cork team that were just finding their feet, or 4 goals against Clare. Like, when you look at their form, actually, the first 2 league games against Cork and Clare, if they didn't go goal crazy, they would have lost those games. And in their last 6 games, they've drawn 1 game and lost 5. And the match they drew was against Limerick with the exact same record. That's where Meath football is. And the Super Meath fans realise that the better. And Colin O'Rourke is absolutely correct. He got a load of stick for saying, look, the players that I have at my disposal are just not good enough for Meath football. But I think most people are laughing at him now after yesterday. It was kind of like they were losing 1-8 to 2 points at half time against an Offaly team. They were mid-table in Division 3. So that was a pretty poor showing for Meath footballing standards. But maybe it is where Meath football is, and it'll take a long time before they go back to the promised lands.
And just one last point, John, and I've harped on about this, and I want people to listen to me on this. And no TV executives personally, literally 2 doors from me, lives a top TV executive in Scotland. When do you get Dublin playing Laois in a game, and he has to fork out £150,000 for a live event like that? At least, by the way, at least. Why is he going to do that? Where's the justification in that? The product is rotten. It's stinking. It's horrible. And we're going to see it again in the next couple of weeks because obviously, in my opinion, Kerry will hockey Clare. And if I'm Sky Sports head of, new contracts or new sport contracts, I'm not looking near the GA. That's why I said to you at the start of this year, I think that's why Sky got out. It was a rotten product.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's why Sky got or left the market, yeah.
Why are they spending $1 million or whatever else to pay the GA rights when the only thing that's good for them is, as Matthew said, the hurling. And some of the GA games, they were covering 10 a year, whatever else it happened to be. Some of them are rotten, absolutely rotten. I think they covered that Mayo Leitrim game, actually, I talked to you about earlier on.
Or the Darty covered.
No, it was definitely Sky covered that game.
Oh, okay. Kevin, if you're a Laois player tonight, what must you be thinking?
What's the point? Really? Or flip it round and think in a positive note and say our goal next year is quite simply a league. The league is where it starts at and where it finishes at. The championship is no use to us because of the modern format that it's in. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything has to go in our league, our league, our league. So the league is more important and vital to them than the championship. It's like this discussion about, Manchester City, is the league more important to them or the Champions League? For GA teams in Division 4 especially, the league is the most essential thing to them. And as Matthew articulated earlier, when you're drawn out against a Division 1 team and you're a Division 4 team, what's the point in even that match taking place? You're wasting petrol money.
Yeah.
Rant over.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully some of the Laois lads get up with the sense and head off to wherever they head off. Hopefully a few calls are coming their way this week to get off to America or just get out of the country, because that is backwards. That result is absolutely ridiculous and no one has learned a jot from it. We will move on to the other games in the Leinster Football Championship. In Network Cullen Park, it was Kildare 117, Wicklow 10 points. And then in Park Talton, it was Louth 210, Westmeath 111. Great win for Mickey Hart and Louth. He was absolutely delighted after the game. And goes to a bit of infrastructure, a bit of money pumped in. And that's the results of that. And then in the Ulster Senior Football Championship quarter-final, in Park yesterday, it was down 2-13, Donegal 111. Mr. Hurley, Donegal want the season to end as quick as I could say boo.
Yeah, and it looked like Donegal actually had a good start to the game. They got 1-1 inside the first few minutes. Jason McGee scoring a quick counter-attack goal and 1-4 at half-time, and we're thinking, okay, Donegal are in this game. They're steadily in this game. Then they concede a penalty, which Pat Havern converts, and they capitulate. Look, it's Donegal's story of the season. They've been dreadful. And they're now in part 4 for Sam Maguire. They've confirmed Sam Maguire's status, but at the same time, if they're on a group, Kerry, Armagh, Mayo, they're going to get slaughtered. And Donegal's horrendous season isn't going to end here, because you look at Ryan McHugh leaving the panel, you look at Paddy McBrearty getting the injury. Donegal is only going one way and one way only, and that is to absolute drubbings in the Sam Maguire Championship. But a word on Down, incredible performance. And I looked at the Down panel, actually, 8 out of the 26 are Kilcoo players. And the manager, Conor Laverty, he's slowly but surely bringing them back in. Like, you look at Brannigan, who scored a point yesterday, starters, Ryan Johnston, who's definitely a crucial player, Sheelan Johnston, who's an excellent young player, real fan of him, was on the bench yesterday. I think he came on as well. So an excellent young player to keep an eye out on. Niall Kane, who made a few good saves yesterday for Down, excellent as well. Mihal Rooney, Ryan McAvoy. Them Kilcoo players were the key to their All-Ireland success. And I wouldn't put it past Down to beat Armagh this weekend either. I think Down are definitely primed to do something. And yeah, I think Conor Laverty has a good factor around the panel as well. Nothing can be said about that, similar like to Donegal at the moment, unfortunately.
Yourself, Mr. McGurty.
Lovely way of summing it up. Chalk and cheese, these two. One on an upward trajectory under Lavery. Didn't have the best league. I fully admit I thought they would go up under Lavery. Didn't have the best league. Were a wee bit indifferent. Pulled a few results, the Antrim one in particular, out of the bag later on that they should never have got. But yesterday, look, I spoke to you last weekend about this kid, Liam Kerr. I've watched a lot of down underage football in the last 15 years, right? Matthew articulates about young Rooney from Sheelan Johnson as well, excellent footballer. Burn and Kilcoo have had lovely teams over the last couple of years, and they're the sort of backbone of this. You add in a few players like Daniel Guinness yesterday, who got through a great shift, even though he wasn't meant to start, you know. So when you asked me last week, I said to you, I think that there's an upset on the cards here. I had no doubts about it. There's something special about Down in the Championship. They're very hard to play against in Uri. I spoke to you about that year that Tyrone were All-Ireland champions in 08 to go to Newry 09.
Yeah.
Down turned them over out of nowhere. They just have this knack of doing it. But the trajectory, very similar to Armagh going into Breffni Park, but Armagh done a very professional job. Donegal going in yesterday into Park Esther. I was really worried for them. Matthew says it, they got off to the brightest of starts. And then all of a sudden they capitulate, and it's a real, sorry for saying this, it's a really boring game in the first half. Really, really boring. It's, you know, two teams trying to sort each other out. And if you look at, I think Down scores in that half where Pat Havern got a point or two, Ryan Johnson got a couple of points, you know, and they're just trying to work each other out. And then comes the second half. And I think actually the second half was probably the most entertaining half of football we've seen all weekend. And that wasn't hard to have. Remember, overall, we got 27 scores in this game. The majority of them came in the second half. I think a big thing to mention for I'll come back to Down in a second. The big thing to mention for Donegal was the early loss of Langan, who's a good player. You know, he can kick points from distance. But again, they looked clueless yesterday in certain times. Their offense was all at sea at times. And I agree 100% with Matthew. This is going to look, the Titanic is sailing across the Atlantic here, and we're about to shoot in the next couple of weeks it down, and it's just going to sink to the very bottom. And that's what's happening here in Donegal. And there's a lot more going on in the background. I'm not too aware of it all, but when you look at Ryan McHugh, what's his options for opting out? You know, one of the best and most consistent footballers in the last 10, 12 years in this country. Why's he walked away? Got to ask questions there. You know, obviously we know all the issues about the manager and what's going on in the background. So I knew Donegal would be under serious pressure yesterday going in. Look, Down have
Is it enforcer from a sorry, but is enforcer from like a Donegal end of things, Kevin? Because it's a proud footballing county. There's some unbelievable people involved in Donegal football over the years. Like it's a sinking ship, as you say, but it is unfortunate.
But they're synonymous for it. They've won 2 All-Irelands. And when you think back on the last maybe 25 years of teams that have come out of Donegal, yes, we can talk about the Tyrones, we can talk about the Armaghs, we can talk about the Galways or the Mayos or the Kerrys or the Dublins. That's fine. Don't get me wrong. We look at some of these teams and some of these players. And I remember having a beer with Brenton Devaney, and he was just telling me, people called them the party boys, and he was just like, to be quite honest with you, we were. Synonymous for falling out with one another, synonymous for never achieving their potential. Wasn't it the year Jim McGuinness came in the year before that to went to Armagh to play against them in the back door in Crossmaglen, and they were absolutely and utterly hockeyed. They all just down tools.
2010.
And I would fear for that. I would fear this year that they might just down tools. I really would. And what's really sad is that, by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, you might be hearing similar stuff. Carl Lacey's brilliant in the background. They're building really good structures underage.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get him back in. So, look, they need to get their house in order very, very quickly. They need to write off this season. They need to have people in the background right now planning going forward for what's going to happen in 2024. Because this is now a write-off, in my opinion. Briefly again, just touching back and Down. Look, again, Matthew made a brilliant point earlier about the Clare, the Munster final going to Cusack Park. Hopefully, the Ulster Council see sense and ask Down or Armagh to toss for the game, because they're right beside each other, and that will be a wonderful atmosphere. No matter if it's in the athletic grounds or if it's in Park Esther, there'll be 16, 17, 18, 19,000. They don't like each other, and there'll be a wee bit of bite there, Down, definitely if it's in Park Esther, being the arrogant people that they are, will believe that they can turn over Armagh. So, Lavery's got them on a bit of trajectory that didn't really start well yesterday. And I heard him, I read an article this morning where he said he told them he was very, very happy and impressed with them, the way they responded to that early setback.
Down Armagh and Clonus, sorry.
Again.
Yeah, it's in Clonus, yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think about that, and I'm not trying to hear the abuse the Ulster Council, is that they think that they'll get over 25 or 26,000 at that game. It's just for money.
And it's on BBC, yeah.
So, again, with it being on the TV, would it not have been better to have it in a smaller ground, sell it out? Saves people travelling money in this cost of living crisis, which the GA doesn't seem to have. All of this nonsense. From a guy, just telling you this, from a guy who lives in Belfast, for somebody from Carryduff or Breda, which is also in the city of Belfast, to go to Clonus, it's a 2.5-hour journey. For him to go to the game in Newry, it's 40 minutes. For him to go to the game in Armagh, it's 40 minutes. Think about it. Down's a big county geographically wise. For somebody from Ballymartin, where Mark Poland was from originally, or Ambrose Rogers, they've got to get into Newry. Then they've got to get to Armagh City. Then they've got to go from Armagh City down into Monaghan Town and then to Clonus. Absolute nonsense. This. Sell the ground out at 20,000, get the money in, and get the TV also on board for those that can't get to the game. But going back to the playing side of things, I think Down they'll be licking their lips. Lavery will be sitting in the long grass here, underdog, waiting on this. My big issue with Down is I don't like their defence. Matthew maybe might tell us before the end of the show. What did they concede in the National League this year, Matthew?
Check this now. I think it was a lot, alright, to concede some crucial scores to the Sean Quigley goal against Fermanagh. That was late on in the game.
Yeah.
So,
The defence, as I said to you before, what they're looking for is a Paul Higgins, a Conor Deegan of the 1990s, a tight marking defender. They haven't had really one of them for maybe 2 generations nearly in there. Like John Clark was a really, really brilliant cornerback, and then they converted him into a corner forward for some mad reason. He was as good a cornerback as there was in the country. So Down have had a real problem for a long time now defensively in their setup. And my big problem would be who's going to mark or who's going to take Connor Turbot.
Yeah, we will wait. Matthew looks like he's on the job there. Are you, Matthew?
Yeah. 7 goals and 93 points they conceded in 7 games.
That's pretty big, yeah. So. And they played, let's remember, they played a very poor Donegal team yesterday. Yes, Donegal are a couple of leagues above them, and it was an upset, but look, they conceded 111 yesterday against a poor Donegal team. And I certainly think Armagh, even with Rain back in the starting lineup, possibly, that Armagh have more options than Donegal do at the moment.
Yeah, Armagh far more options. Like Donegal had literally no inside forwards yesterday at all. It was grim if you win. Lads, we will move on to this weekend's action on Saturday in the Ulster Senior Football Championship semi-final. You have Derry against Monaghan and O'Neill's Healy Park at 5 p.m. And of course, the game will be live on GA Go. We will have to get used to that, lads. Not RT or no on BBC, and it's probably the game of the weekend. But such is life, Mr. McGarty. It's a mouth-watering.
It's a game of the weekend, as you said. Mouth-watering, not for me. I think Monaghan have had their big game. And I think Derry are too cute behind the ears for anybody left in Ulster. That's my opinion. I'm going to give it to you straight. I think Derry are on a trajectory now that is going to be very difficult to take them off in terms of Ulster-wise anyway. I think Derry also can have the personnel changes to looking at Jack McCarn, Conor McCarthy, O'Hanlon. I think Conor McManus. I think they have enough in defence to handle what needs to be handled. My big issue again, and I'll say this for about the 5th time to you this year, can the real Colin Glass please step up? I want to see him going and bullying them in this game. Bullying this game. This guy is really, really crucial to Derry coming down the line later on in the year. I want to see him step up, catch ball, go forward, take people on, kick points up and down the park like the Tohill of old. I just want to see a lot more from him. But I think Derry have too much. I think Monaghan, no disrespect, I've wrote them off many, many times and they've stung me in the back. I thought they've had their big game. We know which way they'll set up and which way they'll play. The big thing for me was Monaghan last day out was their transition was slow in the first half, brilliant in the second half. I don't know, and this is where I think the match will be won and lost. I don't know if they'll be able to penetrate the Derry defence in the same way that they did the Tyrone defence in the second half with that quick interchange, that quick exchange of passes, that quick changeover when they turn the ball over. I don't think they can do that. I think Derry's defensive framework is too good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will bang on, lads, because the clock is against us, and we'll move on to the other game on Sunday, the Ulster Senior Football Championship semi-final between Down and Armagh in Clones at 4 p.m. BBC NI. The game will be live on BBC. Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, big game this one, and bigger game. I would argue for Down, because if they lose this game, Sam Maguire dreams are all gone. Win this game, they're in the Sam Maguire Cup. But what do you think about it? It's a big game for Armagh, just to right the wrongs of history. Like, they haven't reached an Ulster final since 2008. This is a huge opportunity to do so now. With Rian O'Neill coming back, as Kevin mentioned there, Jarvis O'Burns came back the other night against Cavan. They have their best players back. You would be hopeful, from a Cork and Kildare point of view, you would be hopeful that Armagh have enough in this game. But then again, I would not write off Down in this game. You look at the Kilcoo players coming back. Conor Rafferty has them tuned, but the defence is a big problem. And yes, conceding 111 was in normal game it wasn't particularly bad against a decent opposition, but Donegal, like you mentioned before, an absolute mess. So Down have to fix up that defence pretty sharpish, or else Armagh could run a book of them. Conor Turbo's in absolute brilliant form, and imagine Turbot and O'Neill in the same full forward line would be absolutely incredible to see. So you imagine I'd be hopeful that Armagh will get the job done, but I wouldn't be surprised if Down would offer another shock this weekend.
Yeah, we will wait and see, lads. We will wait and see, and then we'll move on to, here we go, but we'll do it. Leinster Senior Football Championship semi-finals. It's Offaly against Louth in Croke Park, 1:45. Game will be live on GA Go. Mr. McGurty, what are we thinking?
Who can bet against Louth at the minute? Who really can? You know, they were down and out at half time. You know, I think it was Ron O'Toole scored a goal just before half time for Westmeath. And you know, the way that they turned that round, I think it was 10, 11, 12-point turnaround. The second half was immense. Regardless of who wins it, no disrespect to them, they're going to be hockey in the final by Dublin, rampant Dublin force. Let's be honest. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say Offaly on this. I am. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I said to you earlier, I fancied Offaly since that under-20s. What was that, 2 years ago, Matthew? They won the 20s.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked them set of lads coming up. And you could see, God rest his soul, Liam Kearns was beginning to build something this year. And then obviously his passing away and whatever else. Look, they beat Meath and they'll be on a high trajectory. And, you know, it'll be great to see off. No doubt Shane Lowry will not play for the £1 million that week in America if they're back inside Croke Park. But it'd be great to see Offaly back in a Leinster football final because that's another wee stat for you, Matthew. When's the last time Offaly were in a Leinster senior football final?
82 would it be?
Looking was 07. That's 16 years.
Yeah,
was a 7 point.
There you go. So look, I like what Mickey Hart and Horse are doing, but yeah, love to see Offaly back in a Leinster senior final.
Yeah, I think Louth are moving very well. Hopefully that's a good game to look forward to on Sunday. Oh lordy, and just as the bubble burst, Clare against Dublin, Croke Park, 4 p.m. GA Go, Matthew Hurley.
Yeah, boring answer, Dublin, but like Kildare, they have to win this game. If Kevin's prediction is right, with Offaly winning, Kildare have to win this game. And no, like I can't make any argument that Kildare will beat Dublin, but if Offaly do win, Kildare have to go hell for leather to win this game against Dublin. Will they win this game either way? No, simply because Dublin are just much too strong and much too powerful for Kildare, unfortunately. And no matter what the circumstances, Dublin will ease to victory.
Lads, it's cat, isn't it? Like it is. Like it's a disaster, really, isn't it?
Here's the thing about these games, John, this weekend, and I'll be very brief on this. We're getting 2 games in Ulster that are going to be so competitive, and I'm not here to be Ulster-centric and cheerleader about it. You know, a local rivalry where both sides hate each other, and then we're going to get 2 teams that are basically Division 1 teams next year, and that's great. And then the flip side of this, we've got 2 guys that are playing footsie with one another in Offaly and Louth because they know at the end of the day that their foot's going to be chopped off by the fact that the Dubs are going to win. So we've got, out of 4 games, we've got 2 beauties and 2 rat bags.
It's like being in Coppers on a Saturday night, Kevin. You don't know what you're going to come up against.
No comment on that one. No comment on that.
Oh, lads, I don't know. The pub is calling. McGarty, your player to watch this weekend and bet of the weekend, if there is any.
Okay, my player to watch this weekend is quite simple. People who listen to this who are from Ulster will know that Cross McGlean sits not too far from Newry. And most guys in Cross go to school in Newry. And the one player that I think will relish or love a derby between Down and Armagh is Rian O'Neill.
Yeah.
And I really want him to start. And the reason why being is Armagh excite me a small bit. I'm still not convinced of this project, but they excite me with that axis of Grugan, Turbot, and O'Neill. And even if Mernon plays as well, starting to see a shape of a really, really good, strong forward line in there. Okay, Stephen Fucker chips in as well, Stephen Campbell, really, really good player as well. But for me, this game was made for Rian O'Neill. He will love this. Absolutely and utterly love this. So to see him in at the start will be immense. And Armagh should fire him straight into full forward and expose that down the fence straight away. And he's the boy for it. He grew up living and hearing stories about this game. So it'll be interesting to see that. Bet of the weekend. Even though it tipped Awfully, Louth to beat Awfully.
Or Awfully beat Louth? No, is it?
No. I tipped Awfully, but if you're looking to bet, right, you always have to go for something that people mightn't see. Louth to beat Awfully.
What about Clare against the Dubs?
Yeah. 1 to 17,100,000. Even Elon Musk would put his 34 billion on Dublin.
We must get Musk to sponsor this podcast. Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, player of the week. I'm going to go Stephen O'Hanlon from Monaghan. He could settle out in this game against Derry. Like, I've been worried about Derry's strength and depth, and it'll be tested this weekend. O'Hanlon in the last few minutes against Tyrone excelled, and I think he could do so again against Derry. As for bet of the weekend, I'm going to go Awfully and Loud will go to a penalty shootout.
Interesting.
Interesting. It will probably go all the way, won't it?
I think so. And who would win the penalty shootout? You'd have to expect Awfully with the forward save at their disposal, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great to see Awfully in a Leinster final. First time since 2007, is it?
2006, I think, a Leinster final. 2007 was the last time they reached the semi-final.
Okay.
So the win against Meath was way bigger than people may have thought. So it was a big win for Offaly.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with Shane Laurie's millions.
Money talks, Kevy.
Bullshit walks.
Happy days, lads. Any other points, or are we happy enough? All good?
All good for me.
Happy days. Lads, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by yourgretch.com. Use the promo code JMac podcast to get 15% off on their website. Loads of gear dropping time for championship, so get your hands on it. Mr. McGarty, thank you very much. Mr. Hurley, thank you very much. Lads, have a great week.
Schloss. See you soon.